So hello everyone, welcome to the Global Goddess Fest, where both men and women are tuning in from around the world to receive education, connect with global leaders, and gain inspiration on creating the life of your dreams. So today we have Maria Teresa Chavez here, so excited, and I'm glad that we were able to squeeze this in. We were having some scheduling difficulties, and the magic of everything coming together and making it happen has arrived.
Yes, it has. Thank you so much for having me, dear.
And to all of our viewers, to give you a little insight of Maria's work, she's a holistic health coach and educator with 13 years of expertise in nutrition, fitness, and holistic lifestyle. So she's a yoga instructor, personal trainer, group fitness instructor, nutrition consultant, life and spiritual coach, and assist in helping people seek new cutting-edge transformational tools so that way they can really dive into themselves and figure out their optimal wellness and how to radiate health and vitality through their life. So happy that you're here, and you've been traveling all around the world doing all this stuff, so we were able to just catch you in the nick of time. And through your travels and through your travels, what you're doing is really bringing in this wisdom from different native cultures and traditions from all over the world. Some of her other work that she's done, she ran the therapeutic department at Crossroads I.M.P.A.C.T Treatment Center in Mexico, and is the founder of Sacred Earth Warriors, transformational healing event and retreat company. So excited to have you here. You have a wealth of knowledge in all these different aspects, and I think really you've been able to show up as a feminine leader in multiple ways. So thank you for being here and representing it.
No, thank you again so much for having me, dear. It's always such an honor to come together and join forces and just share. I think that's what we are all doing in this moment, is really bringing our kind of areas of expertise together, because we're realizing that as much as we all have a lot of answers in our specific genres, that we don't have the fullest picture of how to be healthy, happy humans and a healthy, happy kind of humanity and society, unless we all come together and have these times where we're in dialogue.
Definitely. And so through all of your work, what would you say is your main expertise?
Yeah, I will say that my clients often call me a soul doctor. So I would say that one of my areas of expertise is really understanding the human psyche in a way that most people don't, just because they haven't had the opportunity to really explore the farthest reaches. I actually had a psychotic break when I was young, about 16, 17 years old, and it was such a gift. At that time, obviously didn't seem that way, but it really allowed me to do some very, very, very profound adventuring again into the farthest reaches of my psyche to find out what was I made up of, essentially. How did I get sick in the first place? And how was I going to be able to fix myself? Because even at that age, I felt very strongly that conventional medicine did not have answers for me. And I'll be honest, I'm going to preface already, it was an equally courageous and stupid, kind of decision, because I went against every single authority figure around me, and I was really at the brink of death. So thank goodness it went the way that it did. But I went out on a pilgrimage, and I decided, I felt like the world was really upside down, and I wanted to find out what were the real answers. And over the last, again, about 13 years, I have been completely devoted to true healing. And what does it look like to truly heal? Physically, spiritually, emotionally, and the understanding that none of those, you can't be healthy or fully healthy in just one area, that we really have to look at all the different areas and how they're all connected.
Yeah, I think that's a really important thing to tap into, because sometimes we just dive into health and we're like, okay, I'm going to be on my A game, go to the gym every day, and then we forget about this whole other side, or we just dive into meditation and we're like, okay, heal my spiritual body, and yet we forget about this whole other aspect.
Absolutely.
what have been some of the tools that you've used to kind of go through this healing process on this larger scale where you are healing all these different components?
Yeah, so for myself, the number one, and again, I model, I should say, what I offer to the people that I work with is really the things that I did that had profound results. Now, again, remember that I was a very extreme case, doesn't mean that everybody I work with is, it's going through a severe mental or physical illness, but a lot of them are. That being said, a lot of the tools are things that are they're adaptable for all of us, and they're kind of the base and the building blocks of what I see we all need to do to be super happy, healthy humans. A lot of that starts with nutrition. I feel like the basis and the foundation, it can be very difficult to be sensitive, to be empathetic, to be creative, to be functional in the ways that we need humans to be functional if our brain chemistry and our physical body isn't digesting correctly, etc. So foundation is always nutrition is always a foundation that is supportive to everybody. There's not one person that would not benefit from really having their nutrition in line. Mm-hmm. That being said, it can be a lot easier than we like to think it is, especially with so many people kind of going to extremes and sharing their extreme methodologies, so to speak. It can be easy to think, oh gosh, look at this health expert is telling me I've got to dry fast, or you know what I mean, do whatever the thing is that seems like totally out of my scope of reality. And that's not the truth. The truth is that, yeah, there's some extreme things that we can do if we want to really, for a specific reason. But there's also some really foundational things that make a huge difference. So I noticed, for example, essential fatty acids. The majority of humans are, especially in the US, because of the whole low-fat fad that was around for so long when a lot of us were young, our parents were really in this idea that it was healthier to eat low-fat. So a lot of us were, given skim milk and non-fat yogurts and things like that, and we actually have such a backwards relationship with essential fatty acids. And it's one of the top things that your brain cells need to function well. The mitochondria of our brain cells, the conductivity is all essential fats, essentially. So we need those so strongly. And I, for one, had very severe eating disorders. So my brain was just screaming, really, really, literally screaming for nutrition. And so the essential fatty acids, the building blocks that are vitamins and minerals, and really high quality water is just, those are things that can't be underestimated for their potency.
Definitely. Mm-hmm. And it's such a big topic right now, coming from where I'm at, California. Mm-hmm. And, everyone's healthy, but then as soon as you get out of this little bubble that we've created in Southern California, it's not the norm. And so what have been some ways that maybe if you have clients that are in other areas where it's not as accessible to get these really high nutritious meals and things, what are some ways that they can still receive all of that?
Yeah, so one of my favorite things to do is to share different brands that I really believe in. And again, simplicity is so important. It's one of my I'm double Aquarius. I can really think on a million different realms, and I've always been really fascinated with taking in as much information as possible. But on the practical side, it's been helpful because I can take in that information and then I can synthesize it. And so the simplicity I have found for most of us, when it's too much information, our brain doesn't really know how to process it, especially when our peers and our communities don't have the same languaging. So some really easy ways is literally, to get the most amount of organic greens you can get into your diet, the better. And however that looks, you can throw handfuls of organic spinach into your smoothies. You can, make sure you have a really yummy organic mixed green salad at least one time a day. There's some really great dehydrated green foods powders out there that are very high quality. There's a company called Purium that is actually based here in Southern California. and they are just really phenomenal at their their sourcing, and the quality of their products is very alive. So Purium, something you can look up. There's also an amazing brand, also based here in Southern California with one of our friends named Organifi. Organifi has some epic products, and I know their team really well. And I've noticed the difference when I travel. Their greens powders come in little travel packs. So that has been huge for me, because as much as I love my Purium, usually it comes in a big container, which is great when you're in one place. But when you're traveling as much as I do, having one little individual pack is priceless. And so it's really great to be able to have your little greens pack every day. Green juices are amazing, but again, that's a little less accessible other places than where we are. It's hard to find cold pressed green juice out in the world. So if you have your little kind of packs that you carry with you, it's hugely supportive. Doing things like carrying your own. I have my little pack. I actually don't take a whole bunch with me. I used to have like that huge bag that was all my nutrition. I don't do that anymore. I have my little greens packs. I'll have a container of really high quality, organic, humanely made ghee with me, and some high quality sea salt. And that's really it. That little kit right there. You can add your essential fatty acids into your coffee, or on your toast in the morning. And then making sure you have high quality sea salts is really helpful for conductivity, for your body to maintain an uptake, the hydration that it needs.
And I love that you do travel so much. And I'm also a touring musician. So this is something that I really love to dive into. And I talk with a lot of other people that are like, I want to travel, but I don't think I'm going to be able to upkeep my self-care practice, which includes this nutrition. What are some other tools or like tricks of the road that you found through your travels to kind of like keep in this grounded, centered, self-love place?
Yeah, I think it all comes down to our boundaries, right? Our commitments, the things that we say, this is not a negotiable. So, again, we have to choose what those are, because especially when we're traveling with other people, or we have, a band, we have certain gigs, or for me, I have my clients. I do, there's certain schedule that is, even though I set it, it is set. And so I don't have all the freedom in the world to just say, this is how I want to spend every hour of my day. But that's just like life, right? When you make a commitment, so for me, when I travel, which is always, exercise for me is a non-negotiable. So I schedule my clients specifically, and they all know this. I usually don't work unless I really have to, because we can't find another timing, before, let's say, 10 in the morning. And that time for me is to make sure that I get enough sleep. Sleep is crucial, especially when you're traveling and crossing a lot of time zones, that we really carve out that time to get really good rest. It's so important. And then to have a time for our morning practices. Morning practice is really important to me. Now, again, my morning practice, I used to have 2 hours a day, and awesome. But at this point in my life, I don't have that luxury. But even having 20 minutes to an hour is enough. And morning practice can look different for each person. There's some components that are really helpful to kind of choose from, so to speak, but you can create your own configuration. For me, it's doing my gratitude practices, doing my meditation, doing some sort of kind of a journaling, or what's the word? Free flow kind of thinking, kind of like artist pages have you do just kind of a brain dump first thing in the morning. So you don't have to be crafting these beautiful journal entries. It's literally just like all the ick that's in your mind that's got you cluttered. So just getting it down on paper allows your psyche to be really clean for the day. Doing some exercise, some yoga, and reading some success material, which again, that sounds like a lot, so you don't have to do every single one every day, but as long as you start the day on a really kind of intentional note, you're going to head in a good direction. And for me, as I mentioned, the non-negotiables are really the meditation and the exercise. And the other ones, when I have more time, I definitely add in. But I'm all about setting ourselves up for success. So when we get really rigid and we say like, okay, my morning practice is only complete if I spend a full hour doing all these things, then the first day that we don't do that, then we kind of throw the baby out with the bathwater. and say like, oh, look, see, I can't do all those things. But if we just say, hey, I'm going to move for 20 minutes and I'm going to meditate for 10 minutes and, and say my thank yous, then I'm good. And it works.
Yeah, I think that's an important thing, to really allow ourselves the flexibility to be able to flow in the moment, what we need, and to be kind of just easier on ourselves too, because sometimes as we're developing these different practices to, becoming the like super version of ourselves,
Yeah.
still staying easy and human to ourselves is like one of the most important things.
It's so important. I think one of the things, to go on a bit of a philosophical track right now, that is so fascinating to me is how we're stepping into a world of more paradoxes right now, actually, which means we're able to hold different things at the same time. So, for example, this whole being superheroes and gods and goddesses and all the things that we are really kind of glorify in some ways, and then they're being human. Like, they're not actually mutually exclusive. I think some people feel like, okay, I'm either really this messy human who, can't keep up with so-and-so whatever things, or I'm this superhero and I do it all the time. And that, again, isn't true. The truth is that we can use these archetypical energies to really push ourselves in a positive way to get better in all areas of life, and we're still human. And it's really important that we don't get into too much either or thinking, or else we do end up getting really hard on ourselves, and that doesn't help anybody. It's just not helpful.
Mm-hmm. And how have you seen that like transfer into your business?
Which one, honey?
Basically keeping that balance of
the superhero and the human.
Yeah.
Well, I will share ever more as I get older. I'm just really real with my clients. I just tell them how it is. I don't like to have this ever to be put on a pedestal. And because I work a lot in the spiritual realms, it's easy for people to say, oh, well, she's my guide and she is somehow better than me in some way, and to put me on a pedestal. And it's become ever more important to me to really mitigate that as we go, right? When I hear them say something, it's like, oh, but you are better because it's like, nope, I'm human. I just have a certain set of skills that I've really honed. And that's such a huge part of my teachings, is that these are just skills that I learned because I had to, right? I literally, for my own survival, I had to go in and get a certain type of wavelength going in my mind to survive this world. And it's really sunk into such a deep level that it really supports me, but it is a learned thing. It didn't come out of the womb like this. And so much of what I share is that we're all learning, and it's just like muscles that we're flexing. When we think certain thoughts, we're kind of driving that neural pathway, and we're deepening that belief system. Mm-hmm. So it's all learned. It's all learned skills, which is really a helpful thing, because again, people sometimes like to think like, well, you're over there and I'm over here, and there's no way for me to get from where I am to where you are, and that's not true. So yeah, just being really real and sharing. Sometimes I have off days. I was just sharing with my girlfriend sitting over there. I was in Dallas this weekend and had 2 full days of clients, and I had just gotten back from Indonesia. And I just didn't want to be there. And it was like, wow, I've never had this, where a full day of work, it's something I love doing so much, that I just felt so sad to have left. I was distracted. I just had, I had a lot of things going on, and I just shared that, I just, like, each person who walked in the door, I was like, hey, I'm having an off day. I know you haven't really seen me like this before. And it wasn't even anything external other than I said that. But I said, you know what? We're going to really learn together today. And each thing that we do, I'm really going to be doing it with you. So you get to watch in action as I'm taking myself from one state of mind and one state of being to another. So yeah, just keeping it real. Super important.
Definitely. And I know you've done some work and have background through your personal journey of going through and dealing and working with clients that are dealing with addiction and depression and anxiety and PTSD and all that sort of stuff. What what are some of the ways, because I think a lot of the times when we're in those sort of states of mind, it's really hard to get out of that and to even open up to the possibilities of what else there is. So if there's any viewers out there that are dealing with any of these sort of things, what are some things that you would say to them?
Yeah, again, the reason that I got to where I am is because what I was dealing with, there were not easy answers for, right? Like I was really told the only way you're going to fix some of these things is to take a pill. And I do want to preface, which I always do, I'm not a doctor, I'm not a psychotherapist. So if you are seeing somebody like that, please make sure that you are also listening to your healthcare practitioner, and be including a lot of these alternative ways of being, because the pill is helping with the symptom, but it's not helping with the root cause. It's not going to help you heal the thing. It will help you manage the thing. But the healing really comes from knowing self. And we call addiction, for example, the disease of the lost self. And it's so, wow, like really hits home every time I think of that. My eating disorders, for example, were my addictions. I later in life dealt with a little bit more around alcohol and things like that, and shopping and things like that. But when I was young, and as a teen, it was eating disorders, and it was very much an addiction. It was my obsession with food, and so the disease of the lost self was like, I just felt so unsafe in the world. I felt like everything around me was just not right. And what was the one thing that I could control was what went in and, went into my mouth. And so it was just a way for me to utilize my brain power instead of focusing on all the things that were wrong, was to really get focused on something that would at least just, it made me feel better for whatever reason. So it's one of the key things I like to share with people is to really recognize that the addiction is something that you created because it makes you feel better in some ways. So remembering that it was a coping mechanism that was created because we're trying to find comfort and we're trying to find safety. So when we understand that it's not something that's just a detrimental, we're some sort of a degenerate, like, oh my God, why do I have this and other people don't? One of the top things I share with anyone dealing with depression, anxiety, eating disorders, addictions, trauma, usually those are the people that are the most sensitive, which is a beautiful thing, incredibly empathic. So psychically, just very open. The most creative, like our minds go into such seemingly crazy places, but it's actually a creativity. It's like we're coming up with these stories. You're like, wow, I didn't even know, like no one would know that that's even possible. But it's a level of creativity, which is also very helpful where we are right now in terms of needing to create new solutions and innovation. And then some of the most, again, it's kind of in similar vein is highly intellectual. So the mind not being able to stop the mind. The mind is like choo on this like nonstop kind of track. And when we're in the shadow side of that, it feels like it physically can't be stopped unless we do something to stop it. So once we start to understand that our weaknesses are oftentimes our superpowers, and we know that we're not alone, and we know that this is not something that is, that we're doing because we're bad people, that's the first place, right? Because then when we have the urge to do the thing, shame is the number one perpetuator, essentially, of addiction. So even though, again, it's such a difficult mindset to get out of sometimes when you're just on a track where you're like, I'm just going to have to make a beeline to this thing that I know is going to make me feel better. When you have more conscious dialogue around it, you can actually take that moment to stop, to breathe, to do, a meditation practice, to drink a glass of water, to call a friend. Like, it's so important for us to be able to take that step back and be mindful enough to see, like, okay, I'm heading to go off a cliff in this moment, and I have made a choice that I'm more committed to figuring this thing out than I am to doing the action. So having your toolkit, essentially, having your tools really well dialed, having your emergency phone calls that you can make, and just knowing what's the thing that will kind of save you from running off the cliff in that moment. Yeah, super important. Enrolling your community, having people you feel like you can really trust. But that also sometimes comes with finding other people who are at your level, so to speak. One of the things, again, about people with addiction is that you are very highly intelligent. So there's a part of you that's like, well, nobody else really gets me. So it's important for us to find our people in whatever way, whether it be coming onto something like this or, going to meetups for different hobbies that you enjoy that are, that are using your mind in a different way. Lots of things. Condensing a very big topic into a short amount of time.
Totally. Yeah, just hitting those little points, and I think this is something that got brought up in the very beginning of our call is having this community and having being able to come up and speak about where you're at and share and connect through dialogue and conversation.
Yeah.
And how when we do this, we actually tend to find the people that are dealing with similar things, have been on similar journeys, and we don't feel so alone, because I think that's one of the biggest reasons why anyone gets into a dark place, is that you feel alone and then isolated, and we all need that connection.
Exactly.
Definitely.
Exactly. It's one of the base human needs.
Well, thank you so much for sharing. And I guess I have one more question. How has, this community, as you keep traveling and you're sharing about your information and your knowledge and what you've gone through and how you've been able to find a sense of peace within yourself after going through such extreme hardships, how have you found community to arise in different cultures, and as you're in different countries?
Yeah, well, again, one of the things that I feel is so important to us humans is to travel. I think there's no way to simulate what you learn when you travel. And one of the best things is that you witness and you experience shared humanity, which means that even across language barriers and very different cultures, you see that humans essentially all want the same thing, right? Everyone wants to be seen and heard and wants love and wants, friendship and wants to be creating things that are inspiring. And so when we can understand the kind of blueprint of what makes us all human, of course, we then layer on all of our uniqueness, but that basic blueprint is really profound to take with you when you travel. And to find out what are the ways that I could communicate with any human who comes in front of me, even if we don't speak the same language, through eye connection, through gesturing, through laughter, through, pointing, whatever the thing is. So the more that you travel, the more you realize that the whole world is your community. And it can also be really helpful to get out of these kind of mind frames of drama that we can sometimes get into when we live in areas where we only have access to the same people. We have known them for a really long time. We've created stories about them. They've created stories about us that we can't really get away from. The power of being able to interact with strangers sometimes can be one of the most healing things. So not everybody has access to travel, but again, thank you so much for doing what you're doing, because creating community like this, even virtual, is so healing. It's so powerful for us to hear each other's voices, look into each other's eyes, really just share a moment of, of the fact that we're the same even while we're infinitely different is just so important. And the more that we are able to be kind to each other and be open to having those conversations with strangers on a bus or, walking down the street, we kind of have gotten afraid of each other in some interesting way, where we're very trained to that person's a stranger, I don't want to make eye contact, or I don't want to disturb them, or how dare they disturb me. It can be really powerful to start to bring that energy of travel and community no matter where you are. It's so important.
Definitely. Well, thank you so
Mhm.
much for joining us on the Global Goddess
Mm.
Fest, and really
Mm.
appreciate having you here and sharing a little bit of your wisdom.
Well, thank you so much for having me, dear, and for your patience while I'm at a noisy outdoor cafe, but I'm just really glad we made it happen. So
Yes.
blessings, and thank you all for joining us.
See you all later.